Good morning from Mission Control in Houston, where you are looking at a live shot half a world away from Launch Pad 6, Site 31 at Baikonur, where you are seeing a live shot from Launch Pad 6, Site 31 at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, where an unpiloted Progress resupply vehicle aboard a Soyuz 2.1A booster will look to launch in about a little over 20 minutes from now in a journey to the International Space Station. Launch is currently scheduled for 6:22 a.m. Central Time, 7:22 a.m. Eastern, and in Baikonur, 5:22 p.m., just about 11 minutes after sunset, where it is overcast skies and a cool 37 degrees Fahrenheit. Monitoring the launch today, the Orbit 1 team here inside the International Space Station Flight Control Room, led by Flight Director Garrett Hain and his kinetic flight. They're working with the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov outside of Moscow as they keep an eye on the 90th Progress resupply mission. Upon launch, a 8-minute and 49-second ride up into the initial orbit, where it will begin a 2-day process to chase down the International Space Station, with the docking starting on Saturday morning. That docking will come at 8:36 a.m. Central Time, 9:36 a.m. Eastern Time. It will then dock to the space-facing port of the Poisk module, delivering 2.7 tons of food, fuel, and supplies to the Expedition 72 crew, and will spend almost 6 months docked to the International Space Station. The Soyuz booster and Progress spacecraft rolled out to Site 31 earlier in the week on Monday morning and raised to its vertical state to allow for engineers to complete electrical and fuel line connections. And you can see on your screen the gantry arms that were spread about half an hour ago to unveil the rocket, and now 2 umbilical towers that are buttressed up against the side of the rocket. The first one will move away about T-minus 35 seconds left in the countdown, and then the second one will be removed at T-minus 15 seconds or so. And from the International Space Station side, in preparation for launch this morning, the Progress 88 cargo craft undocked from the Poisk module on Tuesday morning to make room. And that is where it would move a safe distance away from station and begin a deorbit to harmlessly burn up in Earth's atmosphere. Just inside 20 minutes away from launch of the 90th Progress. And again, the cargo breakdown, delivering to the Expedition 72 crew 2.7 tons of food, fuel, and supplies, which equals out to 5,511 pounds. And that includes 1,916 pounds of fuel, 926 pounds of water, 2,574 pounds of supplies, and 95 pounds of nitrogen. And again, this delivery will dock scheduled for Saturday morning at 8:36 a.m. Central Time, 9:36 a.m. Eastern Time. As we continue to monitor the countdown, the destination is the International Space Station, where the Expedition 72 crew is currently in the middle of their Thursday activities, led by NASA astronaut and commander Sonny Williams and NASA astronauts Butch Wilmore, Don Pettit, and Nick Hague, alongside Roscosmos cosmonauts Alexei Ovchinin, Ivan Wagner, and Alexander Gorbanov. And they are in the middle of their Thursday activities, but upon Saturday morning, the cosmonauts will awake and prepare for the arrival of the Progress 90 vehicle. 18 minutes away from the launch, and taking a look at some of the launch procedures that we will keep an eye on. And here's some of the call outs as we move closer to the countdown. And the activity will really begin around the T-minus 7-minute mark, where the launch key will be inserted into the launch bunker, a real key, and it'll transition this launch sequence into automatic mode. And we just heard the call outs that the Soyuz 2.1A booster and the Progress now running on autonomous power as we continue to march towards the countdown. At T-minus 5 minutes and 30 seconds, the launch control will report the range in Baikonur to be clear, and the Soyuz rocket ready to begin its journey. And about a minute and a half after that, the onboard systems will be switched to control, and everything will make its journey towards T-minus 0. As nightfall begins to settle in over Baikonur, again, overcast skies, 37 degrees Fahrenheit. And you can see the venting of the propellant being loaded into that 2.1A booster, the 3-stage booster to give the 90th Progress mission its ride to the orbiting laboratory. As Progress begins its journey to the International Space Station, again, we mentioned the Soyuz 2.1A booster in 3 different stages. First stage separation will occur around a minute and 58 seconds into flight. And then shortly, second stage shutdown and engine occur will be around 4 minutes and 37 seconds into its journey. And then ultimately placed into the initial orbit is Progress, 8 minutes and 49 seconds into its ride upwards. It'll arc out towards the northeast, in which it'll be at an incline of 51.6 degrees to either side of the equator to match that of the International Space Station, and begin its journey to climb up in the atmosphere and eventually catch up to the International Space Station. Onboard recorders have been activated for today's launch as we approach 15 minutes to go from Launch Pad 6, Site 31 in Baikonur. And again, this 90th Progress mission will deliver 2.7 tons of food, fuel, and supplies to the Expedition 72 crew. Docking scheduled for the early morning of Saturday Central Time. Countdown proceeding along nominally from the launch pad, as you continue to see the venting coming off the Soyuz 2.1A booster. And again, as we get closer, T-minus 7, the launch key will be inserted. And then a minute and a half later, launch control will report the range to be clear. And then from there, closer to T-minus 2 minutes and 45 seconds, the booster tank will be pressurized for flight, and that'll optimize the flow of fuel and help add some structural support to the rocket. With about a minute and a half left in the countdown, 90 seconds, ground propellant feeds will be terminated, and then the Soyuz, or the Progress, will be on internal power and begin its auto sequence starting. And that's when you will see those 2 umbilicals, again, buttressed up against the side of the Soyuz booster, prepare to disconnect. The first, the larger one, at T-minus 30 seconds, and then closely followed 15 seconds later by the second. And with about 12 seconds remaining in the countdown, the launch command will be issued. And when that launch command is issued and the second umbilical retracts, that'll begin the sequencing for the launch to get underway as we approach 12 and a half minutes until launch time. And at this morning, the International Space Station, the destination for Progress 90 on Saturday morning as it begins its journey today, currently wrapping up its orbit over the Pacific Ocean and approaching the southeast coastline of Chile and across Argentina. And there you can see the International Space Station and the destination for where Progress 90 will be joined, and that'll dock itself to the spacing port of the Poisk module. Launch still on time for 6:22 and 23 seconds a.m. Central Time, 5:22:23 p.m. in Baikonur. The journey for Progress would begin again this past Monday, rolling out to Site 31 in the morning hours and raised to its vertical state that you see now. The gantry arms and the two umbilical towers would be connected and help the engineers complete electrical and fuel line connections. Those gantry arms spread about 40-ish minutes ago to expose the rocket. And now the two umbilicals providing those last moments of fuel and electrical power before eventually getting into the key moments of the countdown. Here you can see the balcony camera of the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov, just outside of Moscow, in which those teams alongside the teams here in Houston in the International Space Station Flight Control Room closely monitoring this morning's launch, or this evening from Baikonur perspective, as they await those final few moments before the launch of the 90P aboard the Soyuz 2.1A booster. For those just tuned in, you are watching the final preparations of launch of Progress 90 from the Baikonur Cosmodrome, Launch Pad 6, Site 31, where the unpiloted Progress resupply vehicle will begin its journey to the International Space Station. In about a minute and a half from now, you'll hear the commands of the launch key to be inserted into the launch bunker, and that'll transition the launch sequence into an automatic mode.
Есть готовность ППТ жду, 30-й. Доклад 30-го принял, первый.
Aboard the unpiloted Progress resupply vehicle, 2.7 tons of food, fuel, and supplies for the Expedition 72 crew. And that includes 1,900 and plus pounds of food, over 900 pounds of water, 2,570 plus pounds of supplies, and 95 pounds of nitrogen, with the docking for the Progress vehicle scheduled for Saturday morning at 8:36 a.m. Central Time, 9:36 a.m. Eastern Time.
Минутная готовность, первый. Минутную готовность принял, 20-й. Минутную готовность принял, 30-й. Минутную готовность принял, 50-й. Минутную готовность принял 60-й. Минутную готовность принял 60-й. Принята готовность. 1 минута. 60-й сброс шау объекта. Есть сбросить шау объекта 60-й. Есть готовность системы измерения 70-й. Доклад руководителя работ принял.
Now inside 7 minutes to go from launch of the 90 Progress. And with that, the launch key has been inserted into the bunker, and the launch sequence is now transitioning into automatic mode.
Доклад 30-го принял. Первый. Первый. Сброс шау объекта проведен. Замечаний нет. Космический аппарат к запуску готов. 60-й.
About a minute away from launch control that you'll hear reporting the range in Baikonur to be clear, and for the Progress to begin its journey to the International Space Station.
Ключ на старт. Есть ключ на старт 30-й.
Inside 6 minutes to launch. Launch control has now reported that the range in Baikonur is clear, and the Soyuz 2.1A booster is ready to begin its journey.
Продувка. Есть продувка 30-й. Продувка 60-й. Доклады приняты.
As we approach the T-minus 4-minute mark, onboard systems will be switched into control, and the fuel lines and other elements of the rocket will begin to be purged with nitrogen to fireproof them and remove vapors of fuel and oxidizer. Now inside 4 minutes until launch of Progress 90 to the International Space Station. Again, those fuel lines and other elements of the rocket are now being purged with nitrogen to fireproof them and remove any vapors of fuel and oxidizer. As you can see, the venting of that propellant coming off the rocket as it's entering its critical phase of the countdown in preparation for launch. In just a few moments, the booster tank will begin pressurizing for flight. This will optimize the flow of fuel and help add structural support to the rocket on its journey into its initial orbit. And there you can see that the rocket upright and ready, the tank again being pressurized, and you're going to start to see the ground propellant coming to a close and be terminated around T-minus 90 seconds until launch, and that venting will slow along the side of the rocket.
Есть ГДН блока И-70. Есть на духовке 30. Есть на духовке 70. Есть бросовая система измерений 70. Доклады руководителя работ принял. Первый.
Approaching 90 seconds to launch. With 60 seconds remaining, this progress will run on internal power, and auto sequence will begin. One minute to progress 90 launch, and now running on internal power.
Земля борт. Есть переход блока третьей ступени на бортовое питание. Есть отрыв разъема шоу блока третьей ступени.
And there you can see the first umbilical retracting, separated from the booster. In about 20 more seconds, the second umbilical will also begin separating, initiating the launch sequence. Ignition. Second umbilical retracting. Soyuz running up to full power, and we have liftoff. Liftoff, the 90s Progress resupply ship. It has cleared the tower as it lights up the evening sky in Baikonur on its way to the International Space Station. Control parameters nominal as the first stage propels the 90th Progress skyward. Structural parameters nominal as well. Good first stage performance. Vehicle reported as stable, delivering 102 tons of thrust from its 4 boosters and single engine. Thruster chamber, as well as yaw pitch and roll, all nominal. Minute and 15 seconds into flight, and everything so far nominal for the 90th Progress. You are seeing the view from the upper stage cameras of the Progress as it is currently in its first stage of launch, heading toward the International Space Station. In less than 10 seconds, we'll begin the first stage separation and the launch shroud to be jettisoned to begin the core stage, the second stage of the journey. First stage confirmed separation. The boosters have departed, and the vehicle stable as the second stage gets underway. All structure parameters nominal on the 90th progress journey towards the International Space Station. Everything continues to be right on track. As the core stage continuing its burn. Now 2 minutes and 52 seconds into flight. Now 3 minutes into flight. Soyuz core stage performing as advertised. Launch shroud has been jettisoned. Second stage thrusters continuing to perform nominally. Now 3.5 minutes into flight. Fairing separation has just been completed. Coming up now on 4 minutes into powered flight. Approaching the halfway point of its journey into its preliminary orbit. Four and a half minutes of powered flight now remaining for the 90th Progress as it's begun its journey to the International Space Station. Approaching second stage separation. Four minutes of power flight remaining as we approach second stage separation. And we have confirmation that the second stage has separated, and the third stage will continue to push Progress into its preliminary orbit. Third stage engines continue to push Progress upwards as everything remains nominal. Everything continuing to work as advertised for Progress in its third stage. With a little less than 3 minutes left of powered flight. Yaw, pitch, and roll remain nominal as the third stage continues to push Progress into its orbit. This engine providing 67,000 pounds of thrust as we approach 6.5 minutes of powered flight. Two minutes of powered flight now remaining for the 90th Progress mission with an on-time launch of 6:22:23 Central Time. Now 7 minutes into its journey to its preliminary orbit and less than a minute and a half remaining in powered flight. Third stage continues to operate as advertised as we become closer to the remainder of a powered flight, approaching 1 minute and 10 seconds remaining. Eight minutes into today's flight, less than a minute remaining in a powered flight to its initial orbit for the 90th Progress resupply mission to the International Space Station. Seconds. 30 seconds of powered flight remaining. Vehicle remains stable as it begins to insert 125 statute miles above the Earth's surface for its initial orbit. Now standing by for third stage shutdown and separation. Third stage is shut down and spacecraft separation. Progress now separated from the third stage, and we are standing by for solar array deploy, which you can somewhat see in the right-hand edge of the Earth's atmosphere glistening against it. The solar arrays and navigational antennas have been confirmed to be deployed. And we will continue to stand by and await our initial views, our first views of the 90th Progress resupply mission as it is reaching its initial orbit after a successful on-time launch this morning from Launch Pad 6, Site 31 at Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan at 6:22 a.m. Central Time. And there is our first view from the external TV cameras from the Progress 90 as it is officially underway to the International Space Station after an on-time launch this morning of 6:22 a.m. Central Time, 7:22 a.m. Eastern, and in the evening hours of 5:22 locally in Baikonur. And now the information will populate and help us set up for the docking and rendezvous portion, which will come on Saturday morning as it closes in and executes a sequence of burns to catch up to the International Space Station. And that docking currently scheduled for 8:36 a.m. Central Time, 9:36 a.m. Eastern Time. A successful launch this morning atop a Soyuz 2.1A booster. The 90th Progress resupply mission has gone underway to the International Space Station with the on-time departure of 6:22 a.m. Central Time. And that'll wrap up our launch coverage today, but that'll set us up for docking on Saturday morning, in which that'll be a scheduled docking of 8:36 a.m. Central Time, 9:36 a.m. Eastern, in which NASA Plus coverage will get underway at 7:45 a.m. Central, 8:45 a.m. Eastern. Another successful launch as Progress 90 begins its journey, a 2-day, 34 orbit to the International Space Station. That'll do it for our live coverage this morning. Thank you for tuning in. This is Mission Control Houston.